Okay, so you think you understand Walmart, you've walked the aisles, you've seen the yellow smiley face, you've grabbed a flat of water bottles for $4 and thought, yeah, this is just a cheap store with a lot of stuff in it. Fair enough. That's what it looks like from the parking lot. Here's what it actually is. Walmart generated over $648 billion in global revenue in a single fiscal year, more than the GDP of most countries on Earth, while simultaneously selling products at prices so low that thousands of independent businesses have simply stopped existing near one. It employs roughly 2.1 million people in the United States alone, making it the largest private employer in the country. And it does all of this while keeping its profit margins thinner than a grocery receipt. So how does that work? How does a company make that kind of money by selling things cheaper than almost everyone else? How does a retailer grow to that scale without the cost structure eventually caving in under its own weight? The answer isn't one thing. It's a system, a machine built over 7 decades through economics, logistics, psychology, data, and a kind of organizational discipline that most companies never manage for a single quarter, let alone across a century of operation. To understand Walmart, we first need to understand one simple promise that changed retail forever. In the 1950s, American retail was built on a comfortable agreement between merchants and customers. Merchants charged high markups. Customers paid them because they didn't have many alternatives. The economic model depended on limited competition, local monopolies, and the simple reality that most people couldn't drive to a better deal. Sam Walton looked at that model and reversed it entirely. Walton's insight was straightforward but profound. If you charge less per item, more people will buy. And if enough more people buy, the total profit you make exceeds what you'd have made charging more to fewer customers. The math sounds obvious in retrospect. Almost no one was executing it at scale when Walton started. What Walton built was the high-volume, low-margin model, the economic engine underneath everything Walmart does today. Lower prices bring more customers. More customers generate more transactions. More transactions push inventory turnover to levels that make up for thin margins on each item. The unit profit shrinks. The total profit explodes. He tested this in rural Arkansas, in towns that urban department stores had never bothered with. Small communities, underserved markets, consumers who had never had access to a real discount retailer, they showed up. They kept showing up. And as Walton opened more stores, the model compounded. But here's the part Walton understood that his competitors didn't. Selling cheap only works if your costs are even cheaper. A thin margin is a feature of the business model. A thin margin with high costs is a bankruptcy filing. The entire system collapses unless the cost side of the equation is ruthlessly controlled. That's where the real story begins. The principle is simple. The bigger you get, the cheaper it becomes to operate. When Walmart had 10 stores, it paid roughly the same per unit freight cost as any regional retailer. When it had 1,000 stores, it built its own trucking fleet, cutting external freight costs almost entirely. When it had 5,000 stores, roughly where it sits in the United States today, every cost in the business was being amortized across such an enormous base that the per unit overhead became almost invisible. Think about it this way. If you buy 1 bottle of laundry detergent, you're paying for the packaging, the shipping, the shelf space, and the margin for every person who touched it. If you buy a 48-count pallet of the same detergent, every one of those fixed costs gets divided by 48. That's not a sale. That's a structural cost advantage. Walmart applied that principle to everything simultaneously. At its current scale, the company limits operating expenses to roughly 19% of total revenue. Traditional retailers often spend 25% or more. That 6-point gap sounds modest. Across $648 billion in revenue, it is worth tens of billions of dollars per year. Advertising is another place where scale does strange things. Walmart spends approximately 0.4% of its total revenue on advertising, because its size makes advertising almost unnecessary. It is already everywhere. The company's pricing is its marketing. Scale creates power. Here is the insight that most people completely miss. Walk into a Walmart and pick up a tube of Crest toothpaste. Then walk into a CVS and pick up the exact same tube, same ingredients, same size, same manufacturing facility. The CVS version will cost you more, sometimes significantly more. The product is not where Walmart competes. What's different is everything behind it: the procurement cost, the logistics cost, the storage cost, the overhead allocated to that shelf space. Walmart has spent decades engineering every one of those invisible numbers downward, while the product stayed exactly the same. Walmart built its cost advantage along 3 axes. First, direct procurement. By dealing directly with manufacturers rather than wholesalers, it cuts out every intermediate markup. Second, operational efficiency. Every process from receiving doc checks is standardized to minimize wasted time and labor. Third, fixed cost distribution. Stores cluster around regional distribution hubs keep those hubs operating near full capacity, making the infrastructure cost per delivered product approach its minimum. By the time an item reaches a Walmart shelf, it has passed through a system designed to extract every unnecessary dollar from its journey. The price tag reflects that engineering, and that's where suppliers enter the story. Consider what it means for a consumer packaged goods company to have its product on Walmart's shelves. Walmart serves roughly 240 million customers globally per week. No single retailer on the planet offers comparable access. For a manufacturer, securing shelf space at Walmart isn't just a sales channel, it's a distribution network that would otherwise require decades and billions of dollars to replicate. The dependency runs deep. The negotiating leverage runs entirely in one direction. Walmart uses that leverage methodically. Every year, it implements what it calls a +1 strategy. Suppliers must lower their prices, improve quality, or accelerate delivery timelines, not as an aspiration, as a contract condition. If you want to keep selling to Walmart, you improve. Every year, the on-time, in-full metric, OTIF, requires 98% of shipments to arrive within the exact delivery window and in the exact quantity ordered. Failure carries a penalty equal to 3% of the cost of goods sold on the non-compliant shipment. For a supplier moving millions of dollars of product per month, a 3% penalty on a missed window is a meaningful financial consequence. The Vlasic pickle case illustrated what this dynamic looks like at scale. In the late 1990s, Walmart pushed a gallon-sized jar of Vlasic pickles at $2.97, a price so low it offered almost no margin for Vlasic. The jar drove enormous sales volume but destroyed Vlasic's ability to sell smaller, higher-margin jars at other retailers, because consumers simply bought the bulk jar instead. Vlasic filed for bankruptcy in 2001. The pickle jar was, by most accounts, a contributing factor. This is what bargaining power actually looks like inside a supply chain. Every retailer faces the same logistical problem. Goods are produced in one place, stored in another, and sold in thousands of locations spread across a continent. Moving product from origin to shelf costs money at every step. The more fragmented the system, the more expensive each step becomes. Walmart solved this by building its own system. Rather than relying on a web of independent wholesalers and regional distributors, Walmart developed a hub-and-spoke distribution model that routes all product through company-owned regional distribution centers before it reaches a store. Each distribution center, often exceeding 1 million square feet of floor space, is positioned to service between 90 and 100 retail stores within a radius of roughly 150 to 250 miles. Walmart supports these distribution centers with a private trucking fleet of over 7,200 tractors and 53,000 trailers. It does not lease those trucks from a carrier. It owns them. That ownership gives Walmart direct control over delivery scheduling, route optimization, and replenishment timing. Stores can be restocked within 24 to 48 hours of placing an order. That speed reduces the amount of inventory a store needs to hold on site, which itself reduces overhead. The result is a logistics network that operates 15 to 20% more efficiently than the supply chains of traditional retail competitors. That efficiency doesn't come from doing one thing well. It comes from controlling every link in the chain simultaneously and optimizing them as an integrated system rather than a collection of vendor relationships. Inside those distribution centers, Walmart uses a technique that most people outside logistics have never heard of, and which is probably responsible for more of Walmart's cost advantage than any single other factor. It's called cross-docking. In a conventional warehouse, the process looks like this. A supplier's truck arrives, goods are unloaded, counted, cataloged, placed in storage racks, and retrieved later when a store order comes in. That retrieval triggers a new picking, packing, and loading cycle before the goods go out on another truck. Every one of those steps costs labor, costs time, and costs money. The goods might sit in that warehouse for days or weeks. That sitting is inventory carrying cost accumulating silently. Cross-docking eliminates most of that sequence. When a supplier's truck arrives at the receiving dock of a Walmart distribution center, the goods are unloaded and scanned. Automated conveyor systems immediately sort each item by destination store. The goods move across the facility on those conveyors and are loaded directly into outbound trailers already staged at the other side of the building. The entire sequence, from inbound truck to outbound trailer, often takes less than 24 hours. The goods never enter long-term storage. The facility doesn't function as a warehouse so much as a sorting machine. And because the goods are moving rather than sitting, Walmart avoids the capital opportunity cost of idle inventory, the insurance expense on stored goods, the labor cost of warehouse management, and the risk of spoilage or obsolescence for time-sensitive products. Entity sitting on a shelf is money standing still. Cross-docking keeps the money moving. The word inventory sounds neutral. It sounds like stuff in a building. What it actually represents, from an economic standpoint, is a continuous financial drain. Every unit sitting unsold on a shelf or in a warehouse represents capital that has already been spent but has not yet generated a return. That capital could otherwise be deployed, reinvested in new product, used to retire debt, returned to shareholders, or deployed in any number of more productive ways. Instead, it sits in a box in a temperature-controlled facility waiting. The holding costs add up systematically. The physical space costs money in rent, utilities, and maintenance. The goods require insurance coverage against theft, fire, and damage. Perishable items degrade toward spoilage while they wait. Non-perishables fall victim to fashion cycles, model updates, and seasonal demand shifts that leave yesterday's inventory worth less than what Walmart paid for it. Walmart addresses this through a just-in-time replenishment model. Rather than holding large safety stock at the store or distribution level, the company maintains lean inventory buffers, relying instead on the speed of its logistics network and the accuracy of its demand forecasting to replenish stock before shelves empty. The system requires precision. But when it works, and at Walmart's scale, it almost always works. It keeps inventory turnover high, holding costs low, and capital moving through the business instead of sitting in it. But information is just as valuable as products. In 1985, Walmart built Retail Link, a proprietary data network connecting point-of-sale terminals directly with its supplier base. No one else was doing this at that scale. Every register transaction fed a centralized system that suppliers could access in real time, giving them visibility into exactly how their products were selling, how much inventory remained, and where demand was shifting. Suppliers could now adjust production schedules proactively, flag stockouts before they happened, and align manufacturing with actual consumer demand rather than guesswork. The practical effect was that Walmart offloaded a significant chunk of its inventory management burden onto the supplier side, and suppliers accepted the arrangement because the alternative was losing access to Walmart's shelves entirely. Today, Walmart layers predictive AI and machine learning across that original infrastructure. These systems combine point-of-sale history with weather forecasts, regional demographics, and macroeconomic signals to anticipate demand shifts at the individual store level, sometimes weeks in advance. When a hurricane is forecast to hit the Gulf Coast, the systems have already staged bottled water, flashlights, and generators at stores in the projected path. Data, at Walmart's scale, is a logistics asset as tangible as a truck. Here is where the model gets counterintuitive. Most businesses try to maximize the profit they make on each individual transaction. The logic is straightforward. More profit per sale means more money. Walmart operates from the opposite assumption. Compare two hypothetical retail operations. Business A charges a $20 margin on each item and sells 100 of them. Total profit, $2,000. Business B charges a $2 margin on each item and sells 10,000 of them. Total profit, $20,000. Business B made 10 times more money by making 10 times less per sale, because its pricing attracted 10 times more volume. Now add a second effect. Business A, with its high margins, is an attractive target for competitors. A competitor can enter the market, price slightly below Business A, and immediately steal customers. Business B, operating on $2 margins, is nearly impossible to undercut profitably. You'd have to match its costs just to break even, and matching its costs requires matching its scale, which requires matching its supplier relationships, its logistic infrastructure, its distribution network, its data systems. You can't replicate that by opening a store. Low margins are not a compromise Walmart makes to win customers. They are a structural barrier that prevents competitors from entering the market on viable terms. The thin margin is the moat. Walmart doesn't run sales in the traditional sense. It doesn't flood Sunday newspapers with coupons or manufacture the theatrical experience of a clearance event. Its strategy, everyday low prices (EDLP), is built on the opposite principle. Prices are stable, always, and the customer never has to wonder whether they're getting a good deal. That stability does something important inside the consumer's mind. Shopping decisions carry cognitive overhead. When prices fluctuate, customers have to track them, compare them, and decide whether waiting for a sale would be smarter. That's mental effort. It's friction. And friction, in retail, costs transactions. Walmart removes that friction entirely. The price is the price. It was the same last week. It will be the same next week. The customer doesn't need to wait. They simply buy. JCPenney discovered in 2012 what happens when a retailer imposes this model on a customer base that wasn't built for it. Under CEO Ron Johnson, the department store eliminated its promotional pricing and replaced it with everyday low prices branded fair and square. Financially rational, psychologically catastrophic. JCPenney's core customers didn't want fair prices. They wanted the emotional experience of finding a deal, the dopamine hit of the coupon, the feeling of having beaten the system. Without that, they stopped shopping. Revenue fell by over 20% within months. Johnson was gone within a year. EDLP works at Walmart because Walmart built its customer base around it. Its shoppers aren't looking for the thrill of a discount. They're looking for certainty. And certainty, as a product, is worth more than most retailers realize. The economics of a Walmart store opening are not complicated. The company arrives with cost structures that local independent retailers cannot match. It sells the same goods at lower prices. Consumers rationally buy from Walmart. Local competitors lose sales volume. Some reduce staff, some close. Economist Emmett Basker studied this dynamic and found that a single Walmart store opening reduces county-level retail employment by approximately 150 workers over the long run. Accounting for both the jobs Walmart creates and the jobs competing businesses eliminate. The jobs that survive at Walmart often differ from the ones they replace. More part-time, concentrated in a single employer rather than distributed across many small businesses. For consumers, particularly low-income households, the calculus looks different. Lower grocery and household goods prices represent real purchasing power gains for families spending a significant portion of their income on exactly those categories. A family spending $2,000 a year on groceries who pays 15% less because a Walmart opened nearby has genuinely more money for other things. Both effects are real. The consumer gains purchasing power. The local merchant loses competitive viability. These outcomes coexist, and which one you weigh more heavily reflects your priors about markets and labor. Not a straightforward calculation, the mechanism is direct. Walmart enters and prices goods lower than competitors. Competing grocery chains and department stores face an immediate choice: match prices and compress margins, or hold prices and lose customers. Most do both. The result is that prices across the entire local market fall, even for consumers who never shop at Walmart. Research suggests the company's pricing has contributed meaningfully to lower inflation across the product categories it dominates. But the trade-offs run through the supply chain. Suppliers meeting Walmart's annual cost demands often end up shifting production to lower-wage countries or cutting quality to survive. Competing regional retailers pursue wage concessions from their own employees. And in rural counties where Walmart is a dominant employer, evidence suggests it exercises wage-setting power that compresses local wage floors for retail and service workers across all employers in the area. Not just Walmart itself, the Walmart effect is real in both directions. For most of Walmart's history, its physical footprint was its moat. 90% of the American population lived within 10 miles of a Walmart store. That proximity meant that for ordinary, everyday purchases, groceries, household supplies, clothing basics, there was simply no more convenient option. The store was already there. You were already driving past it. Amazon changed that premise. What Amazon offered was not just convenience, but a fundamentally different kind of convenience. Not 5 minutes in the car, but 0 minutes. An order placed at midnight delivered to your door by tomorrow. A product selection so vast that no physical store could match it. And pricing that, on enough categories, was competitive with Walmart's own. Walmart watched its e-commerce share stagnate through the mid-2010s, while Amazon's grew at a rate that looked almost implausible in retrospect. The problem was structural. Walmart's stores were assets in a physical world competition, but a liability in a digital world one. Processing an online order out of a distant fulfillment center while simultaneously managing 5,000 retail locations was not a business model Amazon needed to worry about. Walmart did. The company that had built the world's greatest supply chain for physical retail suddenly found that physical retail was no longer sufficient. Walmart's response was to reframe the liability as an asset. 4,700 US stores were a cost burden in a world that wanted home delivery, but they were also 4,700 fulfillment centers positioned within 10 miles of 90% of the American population. No distribution network Amazon could build from scratch would match that geographic density. The stores became the infrastructure for a new logistics model, not a relic of the old one. Symbotics, a robotics system now deployed across all 42 of Walmart's regional distribution centers, uses AI-powered automation to palletize store inventory with speed and accuracy that manual operations cannot match. In 400 stores, Walmart has retrofitted backrooms with micro-fulfillment centers capable of picking and packing complex grocery orders in under 10 minutes. AI-driven route optimization software eliminated 30 million unnecessary transit miles in a single recent year, avoiding 94 million pounds of carbon dioxide emissions. Simultaneously, an environmental and a cost metric, predictive demand engines now model inventory allocation down to individual zip codes, anticipating demand fluctuations before they materialize and positioning stock accordingly. The company that invented retail data infrastructure in 1985 with Retail Link is still, 4 decades later, at the frontier of what that infrastructure can do. The omnichannel model, treating the physical store and the digital platform as a single integrated fulfillment system, is Walmart's answer to a world that Amazon built. It is not a perfect answer, but it leverages assets Amazon cannot replicate. A physical presence everywhere, 240 million weekly customers, and decades of supply chain infrastructure that no amount of venture capital can compress into a shorter timeline. No analysis of Walmart is complete without accounting for what the machine costs the people inside it. Walmart's labor practices have attracted sustained criticism for decades. The company has historically maintained some of the most aggressive anti-union postures in American corporate life, deploying specialized consulting teams to counteract organizing drives and, in documented cases, closing facilities that successfully voted to unionize. Its workforce skews heavily part-time, which limits eligibility for benefits and reduces the company's total compensation burden. Employee turnover runs at an estimated 70% within the first year. A figure that, while common in retail, reflects something about the experience of working inside the machine. The supplier pressure that generates Walmart's pricing advantage doesn't stop at contractual compliance metrics. Suppliers facing relentless annual demands for cost reduction eventually run out of internal efficiencies to find. At that point, the pressure tends to flow outward, toward labor costs in the supply chain, toward manufacturing relocation, toward corners that are easier to cut than prices. The low price on the shelf is not produced in a vacuum. It is produced at the end of a chain of compressed margins that eventually reaches a human being doing physical work somewhere. Walmart's market dominance also raises ongoing antitrust questions. When a single buyer controls enough of a market to set effective price ceilings for an entire industry, the traditional competitive market mechanisms that are supposed to prevent exploitation stop functioning as intended. Whether Walmart has crossed that threshold in specific product categories is a matter of ongoing economic and legal debate. That the question can be asked seriously is itself a measure of how large the machine has become. Here's the thing about a competitive moat. It's obvious from the outside and almost impossible to replicate. Any competitor can walk into a Walmart store, observe the prices, and attempt to match them. What they cannot observe, and cannot replicate without decades of investment, is the infrastructure underneath those prices. The logistical moat alone is staggering. Walmart's private trucking fleet, its network of 42 regional distribution centers optimized over decades of operational refinement, its cross-docking infrastructure built on precision scheduling of thousands of daily truck movements. Replicating any one piece of this would require billions of dollars and years of execution. Replicating all of it simultaneously, while also building a customer base and supplier network from scratch, has never been done. The data moat compounds that advantage. Retail Link has been accumulating transactional data for 40 years. The predictive models built on that data have been refined against real outcomes across billions of sales events. The accuracy those models achieve is not available to a new entrant. You can build a similar system. You cannot build a similar system with 40 years of Walmart-scale training data. The supplier moat is perhaps the most durable of all. Walmart's supplier relationships are not arm's-length vendor contracts. They are deep structural dependencies built over decades of volume commitments, compliance requirements, and shared data systems. Suppliers have invested in the infrastructure needed to meet Walmart's specifications, replicating that network of relationships. And the trust, tooling, and operational alignment underneath them cannot be accelerated with capital alone. These moats are self-reinforcing. Scale lowers costs. Lower costs enable lower prices. Lower prices attract more customers. More customers build greater scale. The loop has been running for 70 years. Walmart's position as the world's largest retailer is not an accident of history or the product of a single brilliant decision. It is the result of the systematic, compounding application of economic principles that most organizations understand individually, but almost none have executed simultaneously at this scale. And for this long, Sam Walton's high-volume, low-margin model created the foundation. Economies of scale built the cost floor low enough to sustain it. Supplier bargaining power kept procurement costs declining even as demand grew. Cross-docking and hub-and-spoke logistics turned distribution into a competitive weapon. Just-in-time inventory management kept capital moving rather than sitting. Everyday low prices converted operational discipline into consumer trust. And the omni-channel investments of the past decade are extending that trust into a retail environment that looks nothing like the Arkansas stores where it all began. The critics are right that the machine extracts costs from people, suppliers, workers, local business owners, manufacturing labor far down the supply chain. The advocates are right that it delivers real price relief to households for whom every dollar matters. Both things are true simultaneously, and any honest reckoning with Walmart requires holding both. But here's what neither side disputes. The thing Walmart built is genuinely hard to build. The logistics network, the supplier relationships, the data infrastructure, the operational discipline, these are not assets that money alone can acquire. They are the product of time, execution, and compounding advantage running at scale for 7 decades. Walmart didn't become the world's largest retailer because it sold products. It became the largest because it mastered the economics behind selling them. So the next time you walk through those doors and drop a $4 flat of water bottle in your cart, remember, you're not looking at a store. You're looking at the surface of a machine. A machine that took 70 years to build, that employs more people than most countries' standing armies, that has remade global supply chains in its own image.